So in the absence of God leading us into all truth, I fear we will constantly be asking questions and never getting to honest answers, leaving us bereft of soul-satisfying answers to some of life's biggest questions that, by the way, institutions were never supposed to answer for you anyway. It's my hope that people will turn to alternatives like IndieThinker and other media so that they can get the information that you so desperately need, but more importantly, realize an age-old lesson. Every generation must come to know for itself. You have to look beyond society. You have to look beyond its institutions. Yeah, look to history, look to the classics, look to philosophy, look to learning. But yeah, you also got to look for something bigger than that, something higher than all of it to base your life upon. By the way, the Bible's a good place to start. But as we continue to see lies flow like water in our society, it keeps us questioning. And we're questioning right now what actually took place in Uvalde, Texas at the Robb Elementary School shooting. So let's dig into a story that's been all over the news recently as an Uvalde mom has come out and told us some of the things that she experienced that day. So let me jump into right now that story, and you can hear from her personally.
She sped at about 100 miles an hour, she told me, until she finally got here, and this is what she told me after.
Right away as I parked, U.S. Marshal started coming toward my car saying that I wasn't allowed to be parked there, and he said, well, we're going to have to arrest you because you're being very uncooperative. I said, well, you're going to have to arrest me because I'm going in there, and I'm telling you right now, I don't see none of y'all in there. Y'all are standing with snipers, and y'all are far away. If y'all don't go in there, I'm going in there. He immediately put me in cuffs. As soon as they uncuffed me, I jumped that first gate fence, and once I jumped it, I went to my son's class, and I knocked on the door, and I remember the teacher saying, I'm like, hey, they're already bulge cutting the fence to get me. She's like, you think we have time to get out? I said, y'all have time. I'm going to run for my other son. So I start yelling, and I'm being uncooperative, and I'm like, well, y'all aren't doing what are y'all doing? Y'all ain't doing y'all need to be in here. Give me your vest. Somebody give me a vest, something. I started paying attention to how far the shots were being, so that I knew the shooter was all the way still by my first son's class. So when I went to my second son's door, the teacher didn't want to open the door for me. So that's when they started escorting me out. And as I see that they're opening my son's door, I go run for my son and I get him.
While you were inside the school, did you see officers
there was
inside
not
the
one
school?
Officer inside the school when I ran to my second son's class. There was not one officer.
And you were hearing gunshots, so you knew
you could hear the
it
gunshots.
was an active shooter.
It was still active. The gunshots were still active. They were not in there. There was no one in there. If anything, when I pulled up, my car was closer to the school than where the snipers and everybody that was laying on the ground were.
First of all, kudos to that mom. I mean, come on. That's what moms are all about, dude. And dads too. So apparently there was a dad that also did something very similar to this. But all of this information is just leaving me at least so disoriented because you're hearing new revelations all the time about what actually took place that day. I've never really seen anything like it, but it's important that we try to piece it together because we can ask a couple of questions, or at least come up with a couple of conclusions based upon what we heard that mother say. And she said some pretty startling things. The most startling I'll get at the very end. But the first thing I think we need to say is this, is that your security is your responsibility. Like, we've lived in such a prosperous society that we think it's okay to outsource all of our responsibilities to the government or to local and state institutions, that now we think that our protection is solely outsourced to the police. Like, guys, that's not even their job, not to mention that they can't do that. You have a responsibility to protect yourself. We are so prosperous that we think that our protection is just guaranteed, that we'll just go to the grocery store and we'll never have to worry about anything, no harm befalling us whatsoever. And so now we're trying to have robust conversations about gun control when really we need to be having robust conversations about the opposite, about what it means to actually protect oneself in light of what happened at Robb Elementary. And not to mention, the most of which was just kind of like a second point, that we need to be having conversations about our kids and our responsibility to protect our kids. I mean, that mother was distraught and then was arrested by the police because they saw them not acting. And this mother said, that's my kid, I'm gonna go in there and act. It's undeniable. Police can make mistakes because police are human. But also we have to recognize this, and I think this is something worth mentioning, that there is nobody better suited to protect your child than you. Nobody is going to protect your kid like you because you love that kid. You gave birth to that kid. You wiped that kid's butt. You fed that kid. You let that kid badmouth you one too many times, probably, but hopefully not. But you that's your child. It's your responsibility to protect that child. I would hope that police officers all over the United States would agree to that. Now, I understand that brings with it some pretty messy situations in a situation like what took place in Uvalde at that elementary school, because, you know, a bunch of civilians rushing in all at once could become an ugly thing. But I'm just going to tell you this. I, as a parent, if I saw a police officer sitting around while there was an active shooter inside of the school, I would do something about that. And by the way, key term there, active shooter, because did you catch what that mom said? According to that mom, when she finally wrestled away from the police and ran into that school, she was hearing active gunfire. She was even asked by the reporter, yet again, if that's true, that she was hearing gunfire at that time. So the idea is this, is that if that mom's story is true, police were sitting around, standing, keeping parents out of the school, setting up a perimeter while there was an active shooter inside the school. Now that flies in the face of everything that we were told at the beginning of this thing. We were told that the shooter locked himself inside of a room, barricaded himself. He was no longer an active shooter, so they set up that perimeter because there was no longer an active threat as they perceived it. But according to that mother, that is absolutely untrue. But pushing aside all of those things, I think we just need to come back to this reality, that is that we cannot outsource our responsibility. No matter how prosperous we get and no matter how spoiled we get, we have to remember that it is our job to do certain things, and there is no amount of prosperity that is going to take away basic human rights from you. Don't outsource your responsibility just because prosperity has made you lazy. We'll have to figure this out the hard way if we keep on going down the path that we've been going.
You can catch brand new episodes of Indie Thinker with Reed Huberman every Monday and weekly bonus episodes to keep you thinking throughout the week. But you have to subscribe and click the bell to be notified when new episodes drop. If you enjoy this content, make sure to like this video and share it with friends.